Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Thursday, July 9th, 2026, and I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square, Washington's state government reporter. In today's episode, a Seattle proposal that would have given developers an 80% break on what they call mandatory housing fees, these MHA fees, appears to be dead for now. We're going to discuss what this means, maybe the behind the scenes of what really transpired and what this means. We have some reaction from the Seattle Housing Roundtable. None too pleased about this and very concerned that this could mean thousands of housing units that were in the pipeline being scrapped at this point. Then Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson's plan to ban what she calls junk fees for rental agreements. There was a rally that was held on Wednesday inside Seattle City Hall. Seemed like a bit of a pep rally. But there's some pushback as well from landlords who say, okay, what really constitutes a junk fee? Are we not allowed then to be able to charge a little bit more if you have, say, a pet or there's some damage to the unit when you move out? We're going to dive into that. My colleague Randy Diamond has put up an article, and I'll share a bit of that speech yesterday from Mayor Katie Wilson. And then a few weeks after Washington Democrats adopted their official party platform, they had a big convention in Spokane. A couple of the things that came out of that platform, very controversial. So I had a chance today to catch up with Washington Democratic Party Chair Shasti Conrad to ask her about the platform adopting reparations and also adopting the idea that we need to push back against Israel and embrace some really seemingly anti-Semitic platform ideals. So we're going to get into that. We also have reaction from Washington GOP Chairman Jim Walsh, who has some very sharp words for the Democrat Party platform. All right, now a Seattle housing proposal that would have given developers an 80% break on mandatory housing affordability fees, MHA fees, appears to be dead. The Housing Development Consortium informed the mayor's office that some of their members felt that they didn't have enough of a say in how all this went down. So they put the brakes on. And when they went to the mayor's office and said, we're not on board with this now, the mayor's office said, okay, I guess we're backing out of this deal. Now, this comes at a time when, of course, Seattle has a crisis in housing, not just, single family homes, but rental housing, affordable housing, higher income units. They haven't been building much at all over the last couple of years for a variety of reasons, but it's reached a real crisis point at this juncture. So this, again, has all been about the suspension of these MHA fees, or the 80% suspension, has been about speeding up the pipeline for construction. Now, developers building in mandatory housing affordability, what this required them to do, and I'm going to read from this so I don't get this wrong, but they either had the option of making an in lieu financial contribution to the city's Seattle Office of Housing Trust Fund, which currently has hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in that fund, we should note. And that's to support nonprofit affordable housing construction. Or in lieu of making that financial contribution, the developer has to agree then to say, okay, well then I don't want to pay that fee, but I will insure a certain percentage of the new units in this high rise or whatever I'm building will be for low income tenants. So it has to be one or the other. But that has been a real, driver as to why there hasn't been a lot of private construction in the city of Seattle. And so they have had this proposal to kind of give these developers a break. So things were progressing along, thousands of new units in the pipeline, and all of a sudden the brakes are on. So I want to share part of my interview that I did on Wednesday evening with Natalie Quick. She's co-founder of the Seattle Housing Roundtable, and they're pretty upset about this about face because they've been working with the Housing Development Consortium and also with the mayor's office on this for quite some time and felt that everything was progressing, give and take. And she knows that the need for housing in the city of Seattle is absolutely critical.
New permit applications, according to city data, have dropped 88% from that 2020 peak housing production. We actually just got the Q2 2026 numbers from the city, and now it's 94%. So new housing applications are down 94% right now for multifamily housing in Seattle. On the flip side of that, year over year completions dropped almost 35%. So alarm bells are going off for us, right? That we're not getting new production and new completions are finishing. And so supply and demand tells us we are running out of new supply coming to market. And for renters, that is not a good equation, right? That only leads to increased rent. And so as supporters of housing, we are trying desperately to say to the city, you have a really quick moment in time here to act and do something on a temporary basis that is laser focused on two things. It is laser focused on freeing up thousands of units right now that are stuck in permitting and cannot get their construction loan. If we can't solve for that, those units are going to die. Those projects go away.
Now, we did reach out to the office of Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson 2 days in a row, receiving no response at all as to what really happened here. Why are the brakes suddenly on? Is this potentially that, folks in affordable housing, government funded project people don't want the private sector developers getting any piece of the pie? Again, the office did not respond. But during a Tuesday, that Housing Development Consortium meeting, which I took part in that for about the first hour that it was going on, there was a spokesperson from the mayor's office. Her name is Nicole Valestero Soper. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that, but she said this, and we'll put up the graphic as to what she said in that meeting. She said, from the mayor's perspective, she, meaning Mayor Wilson, is very concerned about making sure we're meeting housing production that our region and that our city needs. There were important communities that felt left behind by this policy, and that felt like they were being represented in what this policy contained. They felt like it could potentially harm their neighborhoods or communities. And so, again, maybe that's why the mayor has put the brakes on this. Now, Natalie Quick told me at this point, things don't look very promising, but they don't want to give up for good. They're still trying to negotiate with the mayor's office and potentially resurrect this program.
The optimistic side of me says, where there's a will, there's a way, and we'll see what we can make happen. I do know what makes me feel hopeful is that the data is on our side. Like the story of where housing production is in Seattle right now is in a free fall. And it's not going to get better without something monumental like this in a temporary way to get things moving. But this is a very short window. This isn't a let's stakeholder this for 3 months and see how we feel. Our push to the mayor and HDC, which we had agreed on before, and the council was we were going to try to move this forward before budget started in the fall. And so moving this into 2027, deals are going to die. So it is definitely a, meet the moment. And I'm hopeful that something can come together, but we shall see.
Now, in keeping with our theme in today's episode of housing in the city of Seattle, we had Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson on Wednesday talking about junk fees. And there's a proposal to ban landlords from what they call junk fees in rental agreements. And there was a rally inside Seattle City Hall on Wednesday. Dozens of tenants were sitting there on the floor inside City Hall, cheering the mayor over her proposal. And this would, again, require rental listings to clearly delineate mandatory fees that, tenants have to pay, such as late fees and Wi-Fi and that sort of a thing, and not allow them to implement others. So, what is exactly a junk fee? Well, it's kind of still up for debate, and the proposal is not yet finalized. But here is part of Mayor Katie Wilson's speech.
Seattle is now a majority renter city, and this legislation is about transparency and it's about affordability. It's about creating a level playing field that rewards responsible landlords, and it's about creating housing stability for renters and stability for our neighborhoods and our communities. For me, this legislation started far back before I stepped into the mayor's office. As many of you know, I was a community organizer. Shout out to the Transit Riders Union and the and the Stay House, Stay Healthy Coalition. And that coalition came together and began organizing in 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic, as renters began to see massive rent increases, and we saw evictions spiking and housing instability increasing.
Now, over the last several years, Seattle has instituted a series of policies aimed at protecting tenants, but a lot of these things have also irked landlords, many of whom just simply wash their hands and said, I'm out. You're making it too difficult to even make a living and be profitable as a landlord in the city. There's been laws, going back to COVID, of course, that limited evictions, even if people weren't paying their rent for months at a time, requiring landlords, if they were going to evict somebody, to potentially pay for their relocation fees. So it's, again, been kind of very much in favor of tenants' rights over landlord rights. So no vote on this as yet, probably later this summer. And my colleague, Seattle reporter Randy Diamond, put up an article at the Center Square Washington's page today with a lot further detail on this. So I encourage you to check out his article. Now, it has been a few weeks since the Washington State Democratic Party adopted their new party platform. It received a lot of attention, even on the national stage, because they want reparations for Black Washingtonians, and they adopted some pretty anti-Semitic ideas, including a policy statement that basically says the rise in anti-Semitism is the fault of Jewish people and of the state of Israel. It did not go over well, as you can imagine, with some Washington Democrats, especially members of the Jewish caucus, who felt blindsided by the platform. So this morning, I had a chance to interview Democratic Party chair for the state of Washington, Shasti Conrad, about their controversial platform. And we initially discussed the sort of anti-Semitic platform ideals.
I certainly, never want to, never want any members of our community to feel like anything that's in our platform is something that causes them harm or pain or anything like that. So certainly take the concern seriously. What I will say is that, issues related to, to Gaza, to the Middle East and whatnot, still are very pertinent to our community. Democrats are still feeling quite passionate on, sort of multiple sides related to the issue. We did on our side everything that we could to, try to include our Jewish caucus members, to, include the perspectives of Jewish community members in making sure that we had a platform that, didn't harm them. There was some of this language did get through, but truly it was driven by our delegates. We had nearly 1,000 people from every part of the state that came together to write the platform, to discuss the platform, and then to pass it. And it passed basically unanimously. So I think what it says is that the target really was on Netanyahu's government. And that was the focus, not the Jewish community, that it was about what is, what's happening that's being driven by, foreign government.
Now, Democratic State Senator Jesse Solomon, who co-chairs the Jewish Legislative Caucus, not pleased, as you might imagine. And he told JNS News recently that the anti-Israel language in the platform is not surprising. He says it's not an isolated incident. He, told JNS it is clear that unless one is willing to denounce all affinity for the Jewish state, we are not welcome in many progressive spaces. He said no other identity group is subjected, to something like that. So lots more to come on that, I'm sure. And I did reach out. I spoke briefly with Senator Solomon this morning and am anticipating some further quotes in my article that I'm putting up today on our Center Square Washington page. So I encourage you to check that out a little bit later today once I'm done with the article and it's published. Also, the other controversial party platform piece for Washington Democrats is a push for reparations. It includes the study and implementation of reparations, which is something already being funded by a 2025 $300,000 budget item, where the Department of Commerce hired a contractor to study how that would really work. I mean, are we talking about direct cash payments to Black individuals? How Black do you have to be, right? Somebody who's only half Black or a quarter Black, would they still qualify for potential reparations? Or would this simply be an expansion of race-based programs that we already have here in Washington state, like the Covenant Home Ownership Program? So again, here is Washington Democratic Party Chair Shasti Conrad.
We're proud that it appears to be that we're the first state in the country to take up making sure that reparations was a part of our platform. It was very much driven by our Black caucus and members of the diversity, Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion group, and Jesse Weinberry and whatnot, like a lot of our activists who really fought to make sure that this was recognized in our platform. And so, I feel like all credit goes to them. And again, passed unanimously, no issues at all from our delegates, because I think that folks recognize that, justice, needs to be served, and we need to address the long-term effects of slavery in this country, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to uplift, the descendants of, of the African American community here, not just in Washington state, but in the entire country.
And probably no surprise that Washington's Republican Party Chairman Jim Walsh has some sharp words of criticism for the party platform that Democrats have adopted. He calls it radically progressive. So here is Representative Jim Walsh of Aberdeen reacting to the direction of Washington state's Democrats.
The Washington Democrats are in desperate trouble. They've been hijacked by radical, irrational leftists. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They're communists, they're collectivists, and they're pushing a Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Pol Pot, Saul Alinsky agenda. They use words like reparations. They don't even know what that means. And it's one of the ironies that they demand reparations to people, but at the same time, they want to open the borders to open immigration. It is inherently and internally inconsistent. And there were sections of that platform that are blatantly anti-Semitic, blaming Israel for the violence in the Middle East, saying they brought it on themselves, that they were attacked by terrorists. It's crazy stuff, and it's a testament to how that party has been commandeered by the communists.
So again, I encourage you to check out the Center Square Washington for an article with a lot further deeper dive into this important issue, something that we're going to continue to talk about. And again, I hope to have those further comments from Senator Solomon, his perspective and co-chairing the Jewish caucus for the Democrats is a voice that is important to elevate in this conversation. So that's a wrap on today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily. Really appreciate you watching. Always appreciate your comments as well. We do read those. I know we don't get a chance to always respond to all of those, but we read them and those matter to us, and we appreciate your support and your viewership. Hope to see you again on Friday.